basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the fuck they're doing. Do you understand that?
Hello and welcome to Tracking Trump on DeKoder. I'm Nidhi Razdan. Well, the Israel-Iran ceasefire is now finally in place after the 12-day war, a shaky truce at best with no one really quite sure what is going to happen next. President Trump is furious today about a leaked intelligence report by the Pentagon which says that the US attack on Iran's nuclear facilities did not destroy Iran's nuclear program and may have set it back only by a few months. The report says that the damage from the American strikes was largely limited to above-ground structures. Now, the White House called this assessment flat out wrong, and Mr. Trump insisted the nuclear sites in Iran had been completely destroyed. So what was the objective of this war, and was it achieved? And where do the key players in this, the United States, Iran and Israel, stand today? And what should we look out for next? Joining us on the panel today, we have Ambassador Talmiz Ahmed with us. He has been India's ambassador to Saudi Arabia, the UAE and Oman and knows the region very, very well. Ambassador Ahmed, thank you very much for being with us. Carle, former CIA officer, joins us from near Boston today. Thank you very much, Mr. Carle, for being with us. And Burzine Waghmar with the Center for Iranian Studies at the School of Oriental and African Studies in London is with us from London today. Thank you very much to all of you for being with us. I want to go straight into this intelligence report first, since that's what seems to have got Mr. Trump's goat today. Carle, what do you make of it? You know, the fact that it got leaked is quite interesting. The White House is, of course, understandably angry about it. But in your assessment, is it closer to the truth?
I don't think there's any question that it's closer to the truth. This is, you know, I'm sitting here, but this is a repeat of my life and every intelligence officer's life at a relatively senior level. The U.S. intelligence community, the CIA in particular, was specifically designed to speak truth to power, to be separate from the executive, the president, and not to provide him or her someday what he or she wants to hear. That always creates a problematic relationship between the White House and the CIA. And that's what's happened in this case. This report leaked, but prior to that specific one, already assessments had come out that said the intelligence community assesses that Iran's nuclear program may have been delayed by Israel's actions and the American strike by several months. And that's a very plausible thing. You can destroy a facility, but facilities can be rebuilt. And you can even kill top scientists, but you can't, you know, the Adam ate of the apple, and Pandora's box has opened, and information knowledge cannot be stopped. So it's believable, and of course the White House won't like it.
How is this playing out, though, in the US, in the media and the reactions to it? Because it would then lead many to question why these strikes were done at all, why the Americans had to get involved at all. And if you didn't achieve your objectives, have you dragged yourself into what could still blow up into something bigger down the road?
All of the questions are pertinent and the answers are clear. And yes to all of the above. It seemed to me at the time clear, the time being the decision that Trump made to launch his strike, that we all knew he was on the horns of dilemma of his own creation. Well, in part of Iran's creating it too, which was he said no nuclear capability is allowed, and we will avoid any war. Israel is not capable, and that's not a slight of Israel, to destroy Iran's nuclear capabilities. So the choices are do nothing, negotiate, some agreement, or attack. And an attack will only be decisive if it leads to regime change. But Trump doesn't want to do that. So he clearly chose to do the limited strike possible, declare victory, and then get out of the dilemma to the best that he could. And I think that's what's happened.
Burzine, Waghmar, how do you see this in terms of the American ability to have hurt Iran's nuclear program, which Iran insists is only for civil nuclear energy? But is it true that Iran may have stockpiles of enriched uranium which are actually at other locations that are not being publicly spoken about, and that there may not have been any significant setback to the program?
This is all very, very premature and is just coming in. And of course, I'm just dealing with, as an Iranist, with what is OSINT, open source intelligence. For my part, Ms. Razdan, I would like to commence with this. Iran's program is steeped in skullduggery. There was nothing civilian about it as such, because everything, all aspects of the program conducted show that it had a bomb in mind. And putting aside all that water even under the bridge, let's come to 31st May 2025, when Director General Rafael Grossi submitted the interim report, and on 1st June, 19 of 35 members of the board, the IAEA board, formally declared Tehran was in flagrant violation of its status as an NPT signatory because of the 400 plus kilos of enriched uranium to the tune of 60%, which is as close as possible one gets to 90% of weapons grade U-235. That needs to be put into context. Mentioned 3 new sites for ballistic missiles production that were located, one of which, Turkuzabad, a suburb of Tehran, North Tehran, was passed off as a carpet cleaning factory. It's just that you wonder why carpet cleaning factories have traces of uranium. And that ties in with what you queried as the ability of the Persians to siphon off stuff here and there. There is unconfirmed talk, and I need to look into this further, that if the Russians have assisted them in helping to conceal stuff. Please remember that Russia-Iran signed a 20-year strategic comprehensive treaty this January, which was passed by Putin's rubber-stamped Duma parliament in April past. The Iranian Majlis has not yet done it, but it would have happened if none of these problems would have occurred. And it also ties in with the fact as to why Arakchi went to Moscow. And that is a purely cosmetic gesture, because Putin hasn't done anything for Tehran so far. But Arakchi is putting up appearances of this axis of resistance, which is still live and kicking. He can bank on Beijing too, supposedly, when they have a 25-year treaty, which pretty much is just platitudinous, that was signed in the middle of the pandemic.
Are you saying Iran is more isolated today, diplomatically, geopolitically?
Very much so. And nothing is more shocking than this, Nidhi. What is the mute, stony response from the Arab world, the GCC world, the Muslim world at large? Let's take all 3 very quickly before we go to the next speaker. I don't want to hold up. The GCC world is privately elated because they have looked upon this regime since 1979, which has overtly and covertly targeted it. There were coups planned in Bahrain in December 81, hijackings of aircrafts, Kuwait Airways and the like, the 1987 Hajj riots in Saudi Arabia. All this was conducted by Khomeini's export of the revolution and this radical Shia world outlook, which has upended the entire Middle East, and not for the better since 79. There is also the Arab world at large, when the Jordanian monarch a decade ago spoke about the so-called Shia arc of crisis. Who does Tehran bank on today as it faces its so-called Berlin moment? Khamenei in a bunker as the Allies converged in April 45. He cannot turn to Syria because Bashar is sitting in a dacha outside Moscow. Hezbollah is hopping mad because Tehran did not come to its aid during its gravest hour of peril last year as Israel took them out. Houthis can only have a few spectacular strikes here and there. Save that, nothing else. The Iraqi client factions, the Kataib and the others are there who can do some damage. Save all this, who does Tehran turn to in the Islamic world as a self-styled Islamic republic, championing the cause of the global south, the left behinds and Palestine? It has made no impact at all.
I think that's a very important point. And given what you said, Ambassador Talmiz Ahmed, what happens next, firstly in Iran? I just want to take the key players one by one, but in Iran in particular, do you get a sense that given how this has played out, that there could be a churning within Iran against the regime, or is it just too premature to think that?
I disagree with the previous speaker. He seems to be very intensely hostile to the regime, and I think that has very sadly clouded his assessments. He has repeated a lot of things which are well known in the public domain. Many of them are not proven, many of them are speculative, but that is okay. Everyone has his opinion. I disagree with the conclusions. I believe that the region today is very different from what it was some years ago, largely as a result of Donald Trump's first term. Most of the countries of the Gulf Cooperation Council, in fact, have very substantial and close ties with Iran. And they have, each of them has issued very substantial statements criticizing the assault upon Iran. None of them wants to see a hegemonic Israel in the region. And I believe that this is after we have a degree of peace in the region, there will be very significant changes that will take place in terms of regional alignments. Your question to me is about the domestic scenario. You see, there is an Israel and its prime minister who are totally committed to violence and war. This is for them, this is the main thing they are interested in. They speak of existential threat, but really speaking, the main concern for Prime Minister Netanyahu is the existential threat to his position. And that is why he needs conflict. He needs war all the time. He has been talking about this bogey of nuclear development for the last 30 years. He has seen any evidence of that. And the Americans have repeatedly, IAEA that had spoken out, given that particular report, never said there is a nuclear weapon. As far as the scenario at home is concerned, I would say that Iran has suffered a lot of damage. Certain of its senior people have been taken out. Certainly the regime has been shown to be extremely porous in terms of its security, and major changes are called for. But I would remind my colleagues here that the new president, Pezeshkian, had actually wanted to engage with the West, with the Americans on the nuclear. He had heralded a very major commitment to economic development and social changes at home, and I think that he should have been given a chance. The principal concern that we have in Tel Aviv is not that things that, their principal concern is not that Iran is hostile, that things could actually work with them. If Tel Aviv, that you could actually have a nuclear agreement that the Americans and the international community can live with. You can actually have an arrangement in which Iran can be an integral part of West Asia. Peace is not acceptable as far as Prime Minister Netanyahu is concerned.
I think that given your assessment then of Israel, Glenn, Carle, the worry here is that in a sense, since none of the objectives that Israel set out, which was very clear as far as they were concerned, it is regime change. That's not happened yet. So could this ceasefire end up being extremely fragile and unravel at any given point when Mr. Netanyahu wants to distract from some other crisis?
I am inclined to think that the ceasefire will, although fragile, will last. Trump doesn't want to become involved in deploying American forces or in a war. So, in a sense, the attack was almost performative, although he hoped that it would have some effect. The attack by the United States on Fordow and elsewhere. I'm no particular supporter of Benjamin Netanyahu, and I agree that his primary objective is survival in office and avoiding being found guilty and sent to jail. But I also think it is true that at least the right wing of the Israeli political spectrum, and not only, does view Iran with reasonable cause as an existential threat. Let's say that we're Indians and we learn in the intelligence service and RAW that Jaish-e-Mohammed is on the cusp of possessing a nuclear weapon. Is that an acceptable threat because they haven't made the weapon yet? I would find it quite likely that RAW and the Indian government would feel compelled to act to save several million Indians from plausible annihilation. So it is an existential issue.
You had the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA. You had Tulsi Gabbard herself saying that there was no real intelligence to suggest that they were actually on the verge of making a bomb, and then President Trump kind of bit her head off. But here, I'm just wondering that is there a danger that this could end up being the WMD moment of this administration?
Well, you touch upon a critical point that most observers seem to have elided, overlooked, or considered not central. The dispute between Trump and Gabbard, or between the Israeli position and the American intelligence community position, is actually not one of facts. What the Israelis said, if you listen carefully to even what Netanyahu said, is that Iran is essentially, I'll paraphrase, on the cusp of developing a nuclear weapon, is about to be able to do so. The Americans said, Gabbard was very careful, quoting a competent intelligence service that said they have not manufactured a bomb, and Khamenei has not reauthorized the program to manufacture one. But what they have done is produce enough uranium capable of making a bomb that they are, we don't know, days, months away from being able to do so. That is the dispute on the facts. It's a matter of interpretation, really, not facts. And then you get to the policy decision, well, what should one do? The Israelis, of course, want to change the regime. Others argue that a negotiated settlement is possible. We had one, which Trump destroyed, which accomplished most things that even Israel wanted to see accomplished. So that's the dispute in question,
right.
Really.
So Burzine, Waghmar, I saw that you raised your hand. You wanted to make a point, I think on the previous question that I asked, but also I wanted to know from you that do you get a sense that there is still room for these nuclear talks to take place again? Do you think Iran will come back to the table, or is this just now a dead end?
I'm sorry, you completely faded out. I could not hear anything at all.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, could you rapidly repeat it?
I was asking whether you believe there is still room for Iran to come back to the negotiating table now that this dust has settled for the moment, or whether that's a dead end.
Well, it depends on if Iran is willing to accept the IAEA inspections again, because there is no other apex body to undertake it as such. And insofar as DNI Tulsi Gabbard's earlier view, which the intelligence community, and there are 18 within the Beltway, so there's not just one, have proven her wrong. Of course, Mr. Trump, in his usual way, dismissed what she said, and quite rightly in this instance, that and she herself had to correct herself, because the IAEA report is that of technocrats, so that cannot be dismissed. I'm afraid because we are fading in and out, I couldn't quite catch what Mr. Ahmed said, if that was afforded as a critique, and that's perfectly fine. But from what I could surmise, the public pronouncements put out by the GCC states and others in own it language is only too familiar to those of us in Islamic studies. You surely did not think that they were going to not condemn the US action. Of course they would. It's a question of knowing what privately each of them thinks. Saeed Jalili, a hardliner in the Expediency Council, and who was a negotiator for the JCPOA about a decade ago, openly used to say, our issue is not with Jerusalem, but with Riyadh. Can you imagine if the Wahhabis got a bomb? So that's a fact of existence, and what the machinations are being played out in the region, to which I'm privy as an Iranist. And also, MBS for himself bluntly has stated in interviews with characteristic Bedouin candor that Iran is a clear and present danger to the kingdom. So this is what plays out. So regardless of what these blandishments are put out in ornate Arabic and Persian, which we only well know in the Islamic milieu, and President Pezeshkian could be given a chance. Mr. Ahmed is right to comment on that. Say this aspect. Pezeshkian was brought in as a candidate as a relief for the system because of the restive riots that have been taking place with the Zan Zendagi Zanan after Mahsa Amini's death. and he was felt a reformist was time to bring in. But please remember, Khamenei.
We've just lost the internet link to Mr. Waghmar. We'll just try and get him back because he was making some very interesting points there. Ambassador Talmiz Ahmed, I'll come back to you on this. Just very quickly to just look at a crystal ball for a moment. Do you believe that this ceasefire will hold, or is it very shaky? For us
No,
here, for example, you don't think?
Hold.
Okay, wait, we have you back, Mr. Waghmar. So you don't think it will hold?
No.
Okay, Talmiz Ahmed, do you think it will hold? And here, sitting here in India, I just want to show our viewers a map, of the Strait of Hormuz and why this is important, because a lot of our oil imports come through this choke point, as it's called. In fact, a large chunk of the world's oil consumption transits through here, but for India, which has such a huge reliance on imported oil and LNG, if Iran actually shut this off, we would see a huge surge in oil prices. Ambassador Talmiz Ahmed, what do you think? Will it hold?
I believe the ceasefire will hold. I believe that Iran is seriously interested in a discussion. Much of what we have said so far ignores one principal point, that the agreement that Iran had in good faith with the international community was actually thrown out and rejected by the Americans, not by the Iranians. For a very long time, they actually adhered to it. Even after Donald Trump withdrew from the agreement, they continued to adhere to it, plead with the international community, particularly the European Union, to reinstate it and to relax the sanctions. The enrichment that everyone is agitated about actually happened well after that and was supposed to be a pressure point. It was not supposed to be a weaponization. They were simply reminding the international community about the urgent need to have the negotiation. As far as Hormuz is concerned, yes, the Iranian parliament has issued a resolution. I think it is not worth the paper it is written on. There is no way that you can have Iran closing Hormuz. You have some of the region, you have the Air Force and the Navy, and they are fully capable of ensuring
Mr.
that
Waghmar
Hormuz
wants to
is
come
not
in
going
on
to
this,
be
on your point, Ambassador. Yes, Mr. Waghmar, go ahead.
Pakistan had a foretaste of Iranian drones and missile strikes last January 2024 in Balochistan. So that is a good way to start by reminding one and all. And of course, Pakistan roundly condemned, as you can tell, with their press release from the Foreign Office. And I was just taking that in and reminded myself of what Pakistan experienced exactly a year ago, Ms. Razdan. And yes, Iran was excessively under pressure with the JCPOA provisions that were effected in July 2015, correct. But they did not include the ballistic missile sites and sites for R&D for research production of drones and elsewhere. That was a non-negotiable aspect, which is why it was a bad deal. That was never negotiated or factored in because those sites were never open, and it was a gaping lacuna. There's no questioning or denying that, which is why Trump rubbished the deal in May 2018. You can say that Iran until then was adhering to 3.67%, point taken, all very well. But it was the other surreptitious sites which we were not told about and which we were not privy to. And for example, even now, how is it that these 3 new sites were discovered, and who knows what else we may discover as such? So there was some logic to Trump's.
Yeah.
So there was some logic to Trump rubbishing the May 2018 deal. You can say he had a hissy fit. It was a personal slight against Obama. All very well. I'm not denying that for one fraction of a moment. But I'm saying that trust the tale, not the teller, as the adage goes. And
well,
so
in
Trump
this case,
had
the
a
teller
point in
is
that.
part of the problem. But Glenn, Carle, let me ask you the last question.
Excuse me, since I was interrupted, let me complete my sentence.
Yes. Please go ahead.
Those attacks that were done in Pakistan were a reprisal for what? For the killing of a very large number of Iranian security personnel. I find this discussion a little fatiguing because very selectively certain matters are picked up. Are we a serious academic discussion, or are we indulging in polemics? All the points that I have heard about the JCPOA have been written very extensively. Yet we had a serious agreement. It should have been given a chance. There would have been other opportunities. If it had worked, there would have been various other opportunities to address various other. And we know full well it is Prime Minister Netanyahu, and he has taken full credit for that. He is the one who, as Trump is concerned, and compelled him, persuaded him to withdraw from the JCPOA. Many things that have gone wrong in West Asia since then I think that is the original sin, and we have to put the blame where it belongs. As far as the history is concerned, let us not put it behind us. It's talking about matters that happened 10 years ago. This is very well documented. All of us are familiar with it. Let us move on into where we go from now.
So Glenn, Carle, one quick last question on President Trump himself. You know, this 12-day war, as it were, saw a lot of red lines crossed that people never thought was possible, which was everything that actually happened, including the Americans, bombing Iran. So, about Trump himself, he seems to thrive in the unpredictability of his actions. He likes to keep everybody guessing about what he will do next. And there are real world consequences to that as well. But is there some kind of method to his madness?
Well, this is what all non-Americans ask, and most Americans ask too. But I think the answer is actually pretty simple. We're fundamentally having the country run by the drunk at the end of the bar, someone who thinks that his impulses and immediate reactions to superficial data constitutes wisdom and insight. So he doesn't have a long-term philosophy. Many of his advisors, what were called neoconservatives, are quite coherent. One can agree or disagree with their objectives, but Trump himself reacts on the moment. So the method to his madness is his standard way of acting. There's not a larger strategy to it. He withdrew from JPCOA for the reason that was stated by, I believe it was the ambassador, really to prove that he could undo Obama and that he was more powerful. It's all about powerful self and attention to self that drives his thinking. Now, he would like Iran not to have nuclear weapons, but he is up against the same dilemmas that everyone else is, which is that unless there is regime change, the nature of the regime won't change. And to do that is a horrendous prospect, because it's a nation of 90 million people with no plausible leadership. The mullahs have been good at killing or detaining or ruining anyone who is plausible. So you have a population that doesn't support the regime, but no plausible alternative. And America, one would hope, will have learned the lessons in Iraq and Afghanistan, that it's easy to destroy but hard to build.
I think that's an important note to end on. Thank you very much to all of you for joining us for what was an interesting discussion with some very, very different points of view on this subject. We will, of course, continue to track what's happening in the Middle East, particularly from President Trump's point of view. Do join us again next week as we continue to track Trump. Thanks for joining us.